Alright everyone, we've made some steady progress with the vest so far, but let's try and make some more progress in this video, and in light of that, I've gone ahead and changed the interface just for some kind of fresh look. Why not? Let's just go for a fresh look to see if it speeds us up a little bit. Okay, so we're going to go ahead and create some kind of major changes to the vest. Well, I say major, but important changes, but we're going to go through them, well now essentially. Just one thing I want to point out though. As I was kind of in between videos, I noticed here that at some point we're going to have to Z-remesh this, and this has still got the wonky poly groups from the last video, but some of you may have this as at home as well. But if you go ahead and hit Z-remesh now, what actually happens to the color is something quite catastrophic, which this side is fine, but that side is no longer fine anymore. It's being cut off, okay? So what does that mean? Well, you can try and fix it, play around with the settings and whatnot. Even creasing didn't seem to fix it for me, but for now we're not going to worry about that because the polys are in somewhat of a decent formation. The one thing I do want to go ahead and change now is essentially how the collar sits. Right now it's kind of wide, okay, and that's not what we want. We want the collar to be a bit tighter around her neck and then fan out at the top, okay? That's what I looked at the character long and hard in between videos, and that's what kind of jumped out to me. So let's go ahead and we'll hide that ruffled collar. We'll get the vest, and it just basically, in light of that, what we just discussed there, we're going to bring in the collar here, and we'll use the what should we call it? Where is it? The Move Topological Brush to achieve just that. Now it is going to clip with some of the shirt, but again, don't worry about that. We'll solo that out for now. And you can just make some large gestures in here like this. Okay, so don't worry about the top so much. I wouldn't say you'd have to mask it out entirely, but depending upon the color and how it's set up for you, you may want to choose to mask it out. That's perfectly fine as well. Okay, so just bringing that in there to something like that. So that hasn't solved it all completely, but this kind of angle of curvature here, that's basically what I'm looking for. Okay, and you can see it has clipped with some of the shirts. So why don't we go ahead and take care of that now. We'll just use our standard brush. We'll use symmetry, make sure it's set to local symmetry, and we'll use the inverse of the standard brush to kind of push that under and in. And just check how we're doing there. Just particularly around the neck, we'll just kind of give ourselves a bit more room. There we go, so it looks like a tree stump. And then now, of course, we've got the body. That's being an issue, so we'll go to the body and we'll tell it to do the same thing as well. We'll essentially just go around with the standard brush and tell the body, the neck, to stay out the way of this process. Not essential because, of course, we're going to have that kind of ruffled collar in anyway. Right, now that that's out the way, we've got some more room to play with the actual collar. So let's keep the standard brush for now. Let's actually just use the standard operation on it, and that will actually move the collar in for us a bit more of a stroke kind of based manner, which is something that's a bit more controllable. There we go. Let's turn polyframe off. We want kind of like a round-ish sort of effect as well. There we go, something like that. And of course, smooth it out, but I'm going to reduce the smoothing intensity to something like 50. Because I've got a low poly mesh right now, I don't want the smooth brush to have catastrophic major effects, so reducing the intensity can help there. Okay, that's looking better. It's not there yet, so let's be a bit more drastic about it. There we go. Bit more drastic about it. There we go. And let's check the top. The top doesn't really, we can't really see what's happening with the top, so we can infer it's okay, but we just basically want to check the shape, and we can do that with the Move Topological Brush. That's okay. I might want to push it out just a little bit, but other than that, it looks quite alright. And that looks better already. The fact that the collar's kind of flaring out, I think, looks a lot better. And now we've got to address this little part here. So let's push here, and we'll just kind of push that in and over to kind of match the way that collar lies now. And we kind of see that we're minimizing the area that we've got there with the shirt now, so that also looks better. So we'll bring that through. We haven't got such a what do we call it, a kind of gap where the shirt was now, so we've got that solved. And we'll just do the same on the other side. And of course, at some point we're going to have to make a decision as to how and where this vest actually sits with its folds. There we go, something like that. We might want to nominate that as the crease point there, and the point where it actually does kind of cross over the rest of the shirt and let's push it down. It's floating a little bit. Okay. Let's smooth it out. Smooth it out. Okay, there we go. So another thing as well, just try and make sure that the curvature is quite linear. This is a little bit bumpy, so we use a standard brush there as well. Just on the inside, just try and get it a bit more of a linear fashion. And then you guessed it, we're going to use a trim dynamic brush to come in there. Oh, let's reduce the intensity on that quite a bit, just to flatten out some of that there. And then use a smooth brush to kind of soften that effect too. Alright, well that's looking a lot better, I think you'll agree. Okay, that is if you've gone with the same color type as I have. Okay, the last little part I want to do is just bring the damn standard brush again. Reduce it, make sure its intensity is quite low. And let's just kind of create that area around the collar again that we previously defined but has now been lost because it's low poly. Something like that. Okay. Just use the standard brush to lift that guy out a bit more, and we'll smooth it around. There we go. Now the back of the collar, I'm not too happy the way it sits at the moment. I will likely change it at some point, but I will leave it for now. I'm focusing on the front. And there we go. Okay, pretty cool. If you've got any other straggly bits hanging around like that, you might have to just use the move tool directly and just force its orientation that way. Okay. And this is a bit of a curving out there. I'm just going to kind of bring that over. And then we could use the old tool that we used before. We'll just touch that corner. And then use the inverse. Oops. Click elsewhere outside. Inverse mask. We'll use the rotate tool. And instead of using that kind of drawing line, let's just actually move the little gizmo over here. We'll lock it again. And we'll just rotate it. There we go. Okay. Fabulous. And we can smooth it out to see our changed results. Excellent. Okay, well that's looking better. That's looking much better. Now this part here, if we put on the polyframe here, this fold away here, I'm thinking at some point I'm probably just going to get rid of it. As in I'll just cut it away, I won't use it anymore. I will probably rebuild it later on. So if this kind of gets cut off or is missing all of a sudden, I'm not going to worry about that, and I suggest you do the same. Don't worry about that either, because I thought it could be maintained, but I should have known better. ZBrush is going to kind of get super annoyed with that as we keep crafting away. Now, one thing I do think I will change is go over to the ruffled collar here. This is a great ruffled collar. I do like it. I'm going to duplicate it just to show you what we're going to do with it. But essentially, we're going to change the style of it. This right here is too wide, and it's not something I realized when I was actually making it. I thought it looked quite okay. But of course, with our concept art, we're going to have to attach a pendant here. So all this is going to have to be quite squashed in. So you've guessed it already, but essentially, let's go to polygroups, and we'll auto groups this. And we'll select this one and we'll just mask that off so we don't affect it. And let's use the move tool and we'll just now go ahead and squash it in at either side. You can't use the move topological tool here because it will not select the other layer as well. So make sure you use just a standard move brush. And I'm just going to kind of tidy that up a little bit, make it a bit more narrow, like so. Okay. And something I thought might be quite good about this is that when she's got straps coming over here, I feel like that would be a good thing to do. Have the straps kind of bisect or kind of go in the middle of these two kind of ruffled collar components. But we'll see. We'll see. Okay. Now, the next part we're going to change is the neck bit here. So this neck bit can't be floating the way it is here. It's basically got to come down and sit pretty much on her shirt there. So let's go ahead and we'll hide the vest. And we'll basically just kind of put that where it needs to be, a little bit lower around the rest of her neck. Remember that we couldn't do this in Marvelous Designer because for some reason Marvelous Designer wanted to defy gravity and kept climbing up her neck, which was very strange. But hey, that's just how it is sometimes. So there we go. Okay, right, fabulous. Okay, let's smooth it out. Okay, so we've got this kind of element here. Now this is not so good because we want some volume to this, right? At the moment it's just a flat, kind of flat circular face, so we can't have that. So we've got the, let's duplicate our ruffled collar again. And what we'll do here is, oh actually, I can delete that extra clone. I forgot we polygrouped it, so let's go ahead now and we'll go to split and we'll do a group split, and that's okay. And with a group split there, it split our kind of polygroups into actual different subtools. So with this one now, we can actually go to geometry and under modified topology, we'll just close holes. Okay, now what has that done? It's basically given that some thickness to it, and we don't want those ugly tries. So let's go over to Z remesh, we'll halve the polygon count and do a quick Z remesh. There we go. Okay, nice. Now that it's got some thickness to it, we can make it as chunky as we'd like, and that's perfectly fine. Okay, so I'm not going to be too bothered about what it looks like just yet. I'm just going to go ahead and add some kind of volume to it. I am going to, however, isolate this part here, and it's not very clear at the moment, but just generally somewhere around here. I don't want it affecting that area just yet, and I'll kind of reveal why a little bit later on. But I'm basically just going to reduce the volume around the middle part of the neck. I'm going to make the top and the bottom of the neck kind of look flared out a bit more, and I'm just using the clay build-up brush to achieve this effect. And you can put in some random kind of strokes here and there. I'm not working off any reference just yet, just going ahead and putting this in for now without trying to spin the character around and make myself dizzy. Something like that. It's very, very basic at this point. Now, that mask was there to basically be the fold over to the actual ruffled collar part. So if we go to the subtool now, and we're going to do an extraction, let's go ahead and extract. You can see that's a really, really thick extraction. Let's go for something like 0.005. And we'll let up the smoothness to 100. There we go, we get something a bit more manageable there. Let's hit accept, and that's kind of like going to be the, it's almost like the tongue or tie part, I guess, of the collar. Okay, that kind of folded over. And then let's just solo out that for a second. We don't need the underside, so let's delete the underside by going to geometry, modified topology, and delete everything that's hidden. Everything else can stay, that's okay. And let's just adjust this a little bit to be a bit more of a straighter kind of wrapping. So basically this wants to wrap into there like such. Okay, so it needs to be generally that size. It's kind of wrapped over the top. Okay, it's a bit too heavy on the poly, so I'm going to go to Z remesher and halve it. And I'll halve it again. That's better. Okay, right, so we can see that this is now floating. We don't want that, so we can go to these subtools now, and we can just move them to essentially, the mast. We can just move them to essentially come out from this element here. So we do have to push them underneath. Same with this one. Push it underneath. There we go. Okay, just how this works at the moment we don't have to worry about, but if you'd like to, and I'm going to, I'm just going to subdivide it and just create a few little kind of ruffles that would just look like they're flowing into that there. Okay, doesn't really matter for the time being what that looks like, because we will come back and address it again, but I just wanted to show you that part there just to help sort out the neck a little bit, because if the neck is not quite coming together, it may start getting in the way of what our character actually looks like. So now if we bring the vest back, we've got a better idea on how that just plays out and sits with the rest of our character. Okay, there we go. Alright, and the ruffles have come through the collar here, so it's up to you. I think I'm going to pull the collar out a little bit because it probably is too tight around the back of the neck. So I'm using the move tool here, so I'm moving both the inside and the outside shells. There we go. And I think just to help adjust the collar a bit more, I'm going to change the shape of it now around the back to be a bit flatter, something like that. Okay, so like in the concept art that we were working off before, these collar elements here need to be quite flat. Okay, you can use trim dynamic. You could try the flatten brush, but the flatten brush often has very destructive results like you just saw. So the trim dynamic brush I think is really going to be your friend here. So just by using the trim dynamic brush, we can see we're just kind of attacking. Oh god, spins. I do apologize for the spins, guys. We are just attacking the kind of wall of that collar, if you like, to make it a bit flatter, so we can actually start adding elements onto it that we'll like. Okay, and similar to what we did before with the adding the thickness and extracting the ruffles there, just going to tweak the shape because I then want to add thickness to the vest as well. I just want to make sure that that is the correct shape that I want. Yeah, that looks okay. It's nothing that we couldn't change later anyhow. This might make that a bit more angular. Same with that. Okay, so now let's go ahead. We'll mask the whole thing off. And let's go and do an extraction. Let's keep the results or the values that we had from last time. So 0.005. And smooth, we can do 100. Hit extract. Now you can see there's a bit of an issue with this part here because it's double. If we take double off and we hit extract, oh, it's not double, sorry, is it double? Ah, it's smoothness, I think. Yes, if we don't smooth that out, then it's perfectly fine, okay? So we have to be a bit careful about that element there, but then again, like I said to you, I don't really care what happens to that right now because it's very easily built again, and you see any kind of smoothness is going to kind of round that out. Yeah, I mean, a little bit of smoothness is okay, I suppose. So let's go ahead and if we're happy with that thickness, yes, that's fine. Let's go ahead and hit extract. Extract? Ah, sorry, accept. Ah, okay, there we go. And now let's hide that out. So we've got a thicker kind of vest here. It might be too thick, in which case a pinch tool pass will solve that for you almost instantaneously. But the nice thing we have now is we actually have some polygroups back. So this part here is now actually recognized as an interior part of the shell, and that will help us greatly. So just make a bit of a mental note now that we don't want to change anything about these polygroups. So if we later on do some Z remeshing, like here for instance I'll just show you, and this has fixed the color issue now, we'll keep the groups and we can say the same amount of polys and we'll just do a Z remesh here. We want to make sure to keep those polygroups there, otherwise we will lose some nice functionality whilst we start sculpting around it. There you go. Okay, I'm just going to undo that because there was no need to do that. Alright, so now we've got some thickness to our collar, it's, well, our vest, so it's actually starting to take a bit more shape and form. It's actually just starting to look a bit more chunky. Okay, that's what we kind of want. But again, if there's any parts here that you want to just sort of fix and tweak, then a pinch tool pass will just easily solve that for you. Maybe perhaps you think this is a bit too chunky, which I would be inclined to agree with you, and you can just kind of thin all that out. And don't forget you can solo any parts as well, just to adjust some of that. Okay, I'm kind of in two minds about the vest. I want it to be quite chunky in other places, but also quite thin in others. So going with a bit of extra chunk and then pinching it all down is definitely the better way I'd like to go. So there we go. Okay. And of course we have lost our wonderfully sharp points and curves here. They've all been smoothed over. But of course if we use the move tool, really reduce the size of it, and we pick on a polygon to just pull away from its friends, we can quite easily gain those sharp points back. It's just a bit of a kind of delicate process, let's say. There we go. Okay, so don't worry about that if you've lost some of the sharp points. It's inevitable, unfortunately, so we can just kind of pull on some polys there and we can shape them back into being sharp points again. Okay, just be careful with the smooth brush here because you will lose that kind of thickness as well. The smooth brush does a very good job of bringing down the thickness. But having said that, here I notice there's a bit of a problem here. Don't want to autosave. Let's go to polyline and fill, and I can see here this is what's causing the problem here. It's kind of folding over on itself. So let's take the opportunity now to just push the pink poly group. Oh dear. Let's see. Let's go to the green. Isolate the green. We'll mask that off. Go to the orange edge poly groups. Mask that off. Windows is saying, do you want sticky keys? No, I don't want sticky keys. Just want my ZBrush to work for me. And now we can move that pink out the way, so it's not clipping like that. Okay. So yes, with something that's like this, it's quite a complex part for ZBrush. It doesn't really understand what that is, so you'll have to forgive it, unfortunately. Now, if you've got the time, you could go back to somewhere like some of the older processors and actually just fix this here. But I'm going to live with it. I'm going to go ahead and keep battling with it because it's not such a big deal, really. It just requires a bit of care and attention. And for here, for example, let's mask this area off on this side here. And let's try and push that in as much as we can. There we go. Okay, and one last little kind of adjustment I'll do is I'll subdivide it, and I do just want to create a rather prominent fold and crease down here. Although I'm not sure if it needs to be that intense. Let's make it a bit smaller. In line there, let's divide it again. And then let's use the inverse just to kind of flatten that out. And when you use the inverse on this edge as well. So basically we've just driven like a groove into the vest there as well. Okay, and if it's a bit too far apart, of course your pinch tool will come in and save the day. Just reduce its intensity, just so it doesn't get carried away with itself. And you can see there that already we've got a nicely defined crease as to where the vest folds on itself. Okay, right, we finally solved the various issues of the vest, guys. I hope that was to your liking. And you know, again, it's such an unconventional kind of color and weirdness to it, but I do like it, so I'm gonna stick with it. But I don't blame you at home there if you've kind of tapped out with the bizarreness and just kind of doing something else for your collars now. That's completely understandable. This is something that I will definitely be changing as I go around, keep tweaking, but yeah, I'm pretty happy where it is for now. So in the next one, what we'll do is we'll actually start adding some accessories to the collar, to the vest here, to actually start fleshing it out a little bit more and making it, stopping it from looking like just a drab mesh over the rest of her.